From New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin McCullough.
All right, my next guest is a United States Senator who has taken a little bit of time away from his legislative duties to issue a bit of a warning, a concern, a prayer, a heartfelt plea with the world around him to embrace one of the most important, most critical components of our social structure in this day and age that we live in, and it cannot be overstated. It is the issue of what manhood actually is and why it's so important. And that's why we are thrilled to have Senator Josh Hawley joining us. Manhood, the masculine virtues America needs. Senator, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I penned a book on the issue of manhood probably 18 years ago. And to this day, it is the book of the things that I've written about that was the least political at the time. It is by far the most earnest subject that people have responded to. And particularly, I have heard from a great deal of single moms over the course of these 2 decades that book has been out, decrying the need for how to really understand what a healthy and decent and proper and good man can be defined as, and can be given a place of honor and importance in the culture around us. I'm curious as to what your motivation was for writing this book at this time.
Well, my motivation was I'm a dad, and I've got 2 little boys at home, 10 and 8, and I've got a little girl as well. But as my boys start to get a little bit older, this book really started as me thinking about what's my obligation as a dad to help them become the men that they were created to be, to help them live into that, into their destinies. And then looking around at the culture and the messages young men are being sent, that masculinity is inherently toxic, that to be a man is in and of itself to make the world a worse place. Those are just not true. Those are lies. And I think we've got to hold up a better vision of good, strong manhood and encourage men to live into that, because we need them. This country needs them. Our families need them. Our neighborhoods need them. And we need to send that message.
I don't know how familiar you are with the research work that Daniel Patrick Moynihan, former senator from here in New York, published. It was in the late 70s now. But the amount of work that they looked at in particularly the African-American communities across the country. And this was at a time when welfare and government entitlements were being debated strongly. And his conclusion was that entitlements can never make up for the presence of a father, for the presence of what you would define as a strong man in the home. Do you know if the data shows that we've improved at all since Senator Moynihan's studies?
Oh, I mean, no, I think quite the contrary. You can look at the rates of fatherlessness in America across all demographics, and they've only gone up, up, up. You can look at the same time at the rates of childhood poverty, the rates of childhood violence, youth violence, especially by young men, just through the roof. And at the same time, youth depression and youth suicides also escalating. And there's a correlation there. I mean, clearly, if you want to address the childhood poverty problem in America, put fathers back in the home. If you want to address the youth violence epidemic, get a father into a neighborhood. And this is one of the reasons why masculinity, I think, is such an urgent topic for us as a country. We need good, strong men who are involved, who are engaged, who are providers and protectors. We need that as a nation for our kids in our neighborhoods, but every family needs it as well.
Senator Josh Hawley is who we're speaking with. Senator, I want to ask you something that may not be popular to discuss, but the idea that a man is needed, certainly the AOCs of the world and others that are very much living in the woke reality that they're trying to create now, would argue that patriarchal ideas, these types of ideas that manhood is necessary, that fatherhood is necessary, it runs against the very transitioning agenda that the Biden administration is trying to force into the schools. There's so many things working against this. But it's been my opinion, and I haven't talked about it a lot publicly, just a little bit, that this is really not even a fight against men as much as it is against God the Father and what role he plays in a human being's life. And I'm just curious, is there a correlation for you between those two?
Yeah, I do think that the modern left is basically atheistic. I mean, and I think that drives a lot of their agenda. It drives their assault on both manhood and womanhood. I mean, we can't forget this is the left that today says that biological men ought to be in women's sports, that biological men ought to be in women's locker rooms, that there's no such thing as a woman, and that men are inherently toxic. I mean, it's the same message, right? And at the foundation of that, I think, is their basic atheism, which is there's nothing permanent, there's no God, there's no purpose, there's no eternity, there's only what you want at any given moment, and there's only what the liberal elites think is good for you. I mean, that's their worldview, basically, and it's a very empty worldview, which is why I think so many young people in particular in this country are struggling, are depressed, are lonely, don't have a sense of purpose. So we've got to recover a deeper, stronger truth, which is the truth of our heritage, the truth of the Bible, the truth of our civilization, that there is an eternity, that there is such a thing as manhood and womanhood, and that every person is uniquely created and uniquely needed. And the book is about what that means for men.
Indulge me just staying on that tangent for a second, because when we are talking about the damage that the erasing of distinctions and significance brings to this discussion, and I use those two words specifically because distinction indicates a separate function, but not a less value. People want to say that men and women are the same. I argue fundamentally that that's not true. We are very different. And those distinctions are not there to create inequity. They're there to provide purpose. But what I really find disheartening is that as we're talking about even the transitioning issue in schools right now, it's an erasing of identity. It's an erasing of distinction. It's an erasing of purpose. And ultimately, and I'm a Bible-believing Christian, I think God doesn't make a child to purposefully be confused about what they're supposed to grow up to be. And it's the denying of the designer that is bringing about this whole idea of let's keep kids confused for as long as possible. Your reaction?
You know, it's interesting. If you look at the left's framework, if you look at their history, I think much of what modern liberalism is rooted back in the French Revolution or even earlier. And what was the French Revolution? It was fundamentally atheistic. It was a denial of God. It was a denial of the principles and ideals of the Bible that have been written into our civilization. It was an attempt to get rid of all of that and replace it with the raw power of the elites. And I think you see that same attitude at work today. On the point about difference, you know, our differences, male and female, are the ground of our dignity, right? I mean, it's because a woman is not a man. A woman is a woman, and you just can't become one because you want to be. That's what gives women special dignity. Same thing could be said of men. And this is why this radical trans ideology that the left is pushing is so destructive, because it just erases women, tells men they're toxic, and it erases women. I mean, this is crazy. This is something that the left itself, feminists wouldn't have put up with just 20, 30 years ago or even sooner.
And isn't it interesting that those voices have gone silent on this issue now? He's Senator Josh Hawley. Hold on one second. Coming right back from this break. Don't go away.
Ready or not, he'll be right back. That Kevin.